This is a full guide on how to master Wario Stadium in Mario Kart World. Wario Stadium has a lot of really cool but difficult strategies that you need to be able to do in order to win. So after practicing what you learned from this guide, you should be able to get huge leads on this track in most lobbies that you play in, which includes in worldwides against high 8,000 or low 9,000 VR players, or even at the highest levels of competitive Mario Kart World. But it's not going to be easy because Wario Stadium is arguably the most difficult track in Mario Kart World. But it is one of my best tracks, I'm very consistent at it, and so I have gotten requests for this guide a lot. But first, a warning, this guide is comprehensive. We are actually going to cover everything. So if you just want to learn a specific part, make sure you go into the description and check the timestamps. Today, I'll teach you precisely how to do every shortcut with common mistakes and how to take every alternate path and when you should take them. If you learn all of this, then you will consistently dominate. Let's start with the beginning of the track. Right from the start, there are two paths that you can take. The safe path stays on the ground and you use walls to help reduce airtime around the big bumps. The fast path is much more precise and difficult, and it uses rails in order to get you more tricks to go faster. Overall, the fast path is about 0.7 seconds faster than the safe path, which may not sound like much, but this adds up over the whole race, and being a little bit faster keeps you away from the items behind you. Let's start with the safe path. It's not very hard, but there are a few details you need to get right. On the first two bumps, instead of tricking at the end of them, you should trick in the air after leaving the bump. And the most consistent way to get these tricks is not by pressing R, but instead by shaking your controller exactly as shown on screen. Just do one simple flick of the controller as you go into the air each time, and this should always give you the trick. Then aim to trick at one of the coins, and you can do a left trick in the air to help align better for the next turn. At the ramps, go off a low part of the ramp onto the wall, and make sure you trick off before the wall turns. Then at the next one, do the same thing, but wait on the wall long enough to get an orange mini turbo, and then jump off and drift around the turn. That's it. As you do all this, there's just one thing you want to avoid, and that is to not go too high on the walls because getting this airtime is very slow. If you're going too high, the reason is because you're aiming at too sharp of an angle at the wall, and this is what makes you go high up on a wall. If you instead try to stay more parallel with the wall as you attach, then this gives you lower air. Next, let's look at how to do the fast path, which is extremely crucial if you want to be good at Wario Stadium. At the first two bumps, again, don't trick on the bump, trick in the air afterwards by doing a shake trick as shown on screen, and also aim towards the left corner of the final bump in order to go onto the wall. You want to be aiming about 45 degrees pointed towards the wall, and then do a trick at this corner, and this should send you all the way up onto the wall. Once you're on the rail, your carts will do a little bounce for just a fraction of a second. After this bounce is over, then trick to the left and do two more left tricks in the air. This should put you at the far end of the big ramp. Now, before we go any further, all of what I said is going to be quite difficult, and I recommend practicing that on its own. And in a later section, we'll look at how to correct common mistakes here. But for now, let's move on to the next step. Do a trick from the ramp to the wall, and you want your carts, again, to be aimed around 45 degrees towards the wall. This way, you can ride the wall as high as possible up to the rail. Once again, your carts may do a little bounce at the top, wait for that fraction of a second to be over, and then as long as you're still on the straight section of rail, then you can do a right trick onto the next straight section. At the end of this section, you can do a left trick back over. As soon as you land from this trick, you can do another one, and then watch for this exact gray spot on the rail. Do a trick right at this gray spot. After the trick on the gray part of the rail, you will be going into the upward slope of the final rail in a boost. You have to be very accurate on this next part. Do a left trick either at the black part of the rail or just slightly before it. Then as soon as you go into the air, switch to holding right and do a right trick. If done correctly, this will give you a lot of airtime, but landing on the next rail is not that simple, and if you're not careful, you are just going to fall out of bounds. So here's how to make sure that you land on the next rail. During the first half of your launch through the air, your goal is not to take the best line towards the next rail. Your goal in the first half is to hold right for long enough so that it looks like you will actually clear all this distance. The more you hold right, the less distance you have to travel to clear this gap. Once you think you're actually going to land on the rail, then in the second half of this launch through the air, you need to turn your cart to the left so that you actually attach to the rail. This launch through the air is the most challenging part of the entire sequence. In the next section, I'll go into common mistakes and how you can get better at this, but before that, just to finish off this entire sequence, once you land on the rail, you can do a trick followed by a right trick at the corner. And that is the fastest way to do the beginning sequence on Wario Stadium. Let's start with common mistakes on the first rail. If you are going too low on the first wall and not even making it up to the rail, then you are not angling far enough at the wall. You need to be approaching the wall at a 45-degree angle to make it higher. Now, you might still be making this mistake and not even realizing it because you made it up to the top rail, but because of a bad angle, you made it up so late that you cannot go far enough left to make it up the next wall. Another common mistake is if you make it up to the top of the rail, you wait the appropriate amount of time and you press R for a left trick, but it doesn't give you the trick, you might panic and press R again, which is the same problem as before. You've now tricked too late and you cannot make it onto the next wall. You might think that you could fix this by going up to the rail and spamming R. But if you do that, you may get a floaty attachment to the rail and then this happens, which completely ruins your race. Luckily, you only have to do one thing in order to solve this. What you should do is go up to the rail, wait for the little bounce to be over, and then hit left trick just once. No more than that, just one left trick. If you get the left trick, great, that's what you want. If you don't get the left trick, don't fight it. Just accept that you will not get a trick, ride the rail to the end, and trick in the air. Trying to force the left trick when it won't let you do the left trick is the cause of many disasters. Another mistake is you make it up the wall so early that when you get the left trick, you actually go out of bounds. The earliest time for when you are allowed to left trick without going out of bounds is right after you cross this gray part on the rail. This will keep you in bounds, but it can be very hard to spot that gray part. So instead, you can look at the wall from before you even go up the wall, and just don't trick until you've crossed at least halfway through that section of the wall that has the gray part on it. After making it past the first rail, a common mistake when trying to go up the wall for the next rail is that you don't go high enough. Unlike the first rail, it's not simply a matter of aiming yourself 45 degrees at this wall, because if you start too low, then you still cannot climb the whole wall. So after the first rail, if you think you're going to be starting from too low, then you can start by driving to the left to try and move up the ramp a bit more, but make sure you switch to holding right early so that you can still go at a sharp angle towards the wall. Another common mistake is once you make it up to the top and you do the first right trick, you just fly out of bounds. The reason why this happens is because you tried to trick too early after getting up to the rail. When you get up to the rail, you have to first wait for the little bounce to be over and then trick to the right. This way you don't fly out of bounds. However, if you climb the wall from a very low point, then you are going to reach the top of the rail near the corner where the rail turns. And this means you don't have any time to wait before doing the right trick. This is the most common reason why you are tricking too early and flying out of bounds. So if you are climbing the wall from low and you don't think you have enough time to wait for the bounce and then do a right trick, then just don't do the trick. Instead, just ride the rail and then do the left trick later, and everything after this is the same. But if you notice your right trick is going to make you fall off the track, you can do a left trick in the air to save you. Now let's look at mistakes you might be making as you launch from one rail onto the next one. The most common mistake is when you trick too late off the black part of this rail. If you trick at the very tip of a rail, then you actually get a different type of trick than if you tricked earlier. When you left trick off the tip, your vehicle will spin sideways, called a spin trick. But if you had tricked earlier, then your vehicle will flip in the air, called a flip trick. Tricking too late gives a spin trick, and that's bad because it's much slower and it makes this path not even worth it if this is what happens. But it will happen to you sometimes, so you have to know how to save it. If you get a spin trick, just land as early as you can on the next rail and you can go for 2 forward tricks followed by a right trick. So again, you want to avoid this happening, but you still need to know what to do if it does happen. Another mistake happens when you get a good launch with a lot of airtime, but then you just try to steer too far left and this makes you fall out of bounds. What you should do if you get a lot of airtime is after the initial right trick, just keep your left stick in neutral so that you don't go too far left, and then near the end you can switch to holding left and this will align you onto the rail. Another mistake is when you trick too early off of the upward sloped rail, and this gives you not a lot of airtime. When this happens, of course, it's very easy to just fall out of bounds because you didn't get enough air. However, this actually can be saved. If you realize you're not going to get enough airtime, then you just need to hold right even more at the start so that you're clearing less of the gap. But then you also need to switch to holding left quite early so that you can realign to land on the rail. Now, it is difficult to still make it when you get low airtime, but just keep in mind the concepts here of going far enough right before steering left. As long as you understand how this works and get a lot of experience, then you should be able to make this shortcut every time, even if you get a very different amount of air each time. Now, even if you do all this correctly, you may just barely not attach onto the next rail because even though you landed on it, your angle is just a little too far to the right. If you think this is about to happen right before you land on the rail, you can do a left trick, and this helps to just slightly align you more to the left, making it easier to attach to the rail. And there is one more type of mistake. Even after you land on the rail, you are not safe. Sometimes you will try to do the first trick on the rail and just fall off for seemingly no reason. Most of the time, this won't happen, but the reason why this happens is because of the way that you attach to the rail. If your landing is not very clean and you just barely attach to the rail, then this causes your cart to wobble, and that's why you trick off the track. If you notice this about to happen, then don't go for that first trick, and instead you can just do a trick off the corner of the rail. After watching this section and all of the common mistakes and how to fix them, I hope that your takeaway from this is that the skill ceiling on Wario Stadium is incredibly high, and while the shortcut is difficult, it's not in an obnoxious way where you can just randomly fail it. I mean, if you're not good at it and you don't know the backup strategies, then you will randomly fail it. But I hope your takeaway from this is that it takes a lot of skill and practice and experience and failures in order to be good at Wario Stadium. And if you get really good at the strategy, you will never randomly fail any of these, because there is nothing that can randomly happen where you just fall off the track. Every single issue that you encounter, you can react to it in real time, and you can fix it if you know what to do. And you probably never realized any of this was happening behind the scenes when watching a pro player on Wario Stadium. Unlike most strategies in this game, these shortcuts don't just happen the same way every time. If it looks that way, that's because you're watching a player who knows how to solve every problem as they happen. And this is what separates good players from great players on Wario Stadium. Now let's look at alternate paths in the starting section. All of these are pretty easy to take, they don't cost you a lot of time, and they are all very useful to know. Starting with the safe path, instead of going to the wall at the left, you can start by getting an item and doing a trick. This is only slower by about 0.3 seconds. Then you can take the next turn wide to go for 3 coins, which is slower by about 0.5 seconds. And important to note is that only the bottom path can grab this double item box. So if you're trying to get as many items as you can, then the bottom path is a good way to go. If you're taking the rail path, it is technically possible to grab an item box while doing this entire sequence. However, it's incredibly precise and kind of random, so don't rely on this if you need an item. If you're going for this path and you want an item, then you can drive off the end of the first rail and trick in the air. This perfectly lines you up for a box as you continue on the path. And there is another way to get an item, and that is to do a left trick where the rail bends. This sets you up on a slightly different line, making it easier to grab a different box. Whichever of these you choose, you're going to be slower by about 0.3 seconds. Then after you do the big launch onto the final rail, if you want another single item box, then don't trick at first and trick forward as soon as the rail starts to curve. This lands you on a single box and is about 0.2 seconds slower. And there is one more path you can take through this section, and that is to start with the safe path by avoiding the first rail, and then take an item and go up to the rail on the right. This path is good if, for some reason, you were unable to take the first rail, but you still want the fastest path here. But compared to the fastest way to get an item here, it is still 0.2 seconds slower. Now, I know I've said some numbers like 0.3 or 0.5 seconds a lot, and you don't have to know exactly what that means. Just keep in mind that any choice you make to go slightly safer, or to get an extra item, or to get extra coins, that is always going to cost you a slight amount of time. How much time is that? Well, if you think another player is pretty close to you, that's the time difference that you are gaining or losing by making these choices. Being right next to other players is very unsafe in this section, so if you want to let another player pass you, you can always make one of the slower choices. And if you want to maintain a lead on your opponents because they are too close to you, then you have to pick one of the faster options to stay safe. And that's pretty much it. You don't need to understand every little time save, you just need to understand when is it good to keep going fast and when is it okay to slow down. But of course, the decision making is not actually that simple because the resources of having more items or more coins is going to affect you differently depending on your position and how late it is into the race. So making the correct decision here a lot of the time comes down to experience. Alright, we are now officially done covering the first section on Wario Stadium. Don't worry, that was the most complicated section, and there is only one more complex section after this. But first, you are going to encounter this sequence of 4 trick ramps. In this section, you should pretty much always do the same thing, which is to trick on the first ramp, and then trick on the third ramp, land in a drift around this turn, and you have now entered the second complex section. There are 4 paths that you can take here, and you'll be happy to know that deciding which of these 4 paths to take is actually pretty easy. So let's learn these 4 paths and when you should take them. The first path that you should learn is the coin rail. After you come around the turn, do a trick right here, aim for the coin, and aim to go up the wall at a 45-degree angle. Once you're on this rail, all you have to do is ride the rail, but the fastest thing to do is a forward trick, and as soon as you land, do a right trick. This will get you through all the coins, and right before the final coin, do another right trick, and when you land, immediately another right trick. It definitely takes some practice to get all the timings, but it is not that hard. Out of every way that you can drive this section, the coin rail is tied for being the slowest path, but it does make up for it by giving you 5 more coins than any other path, and it is relatively easy to take. The second path that you should learn in this section is the charge jump shortcut. This is the best path to take through this section, and it is the only path that is significantly faster than the coin rail. However, it is a lot more difficult. As you come around the turn, release the blue mini turbo as soon as you can, then start charging a charge jump by pressing and holding R while keeping the left stick in neutral. You need to charge jump around the same time that you touch the coin, and you need to make contact with the wall above the white sign on its left half. If you do this correctly, you will ride the wall all the way up to the top rail, then ride the rail around the first turn, then in the middle of the second turn, right trick off. This path is a full second faster than the coin rail. When you practice the charge jump shortcut, do not go to time trials. In time trials, once you take the coin the first time, then the next time you come back, the coin is gone unless you restart the entire run. The amount of speed you need on the charge jump is so precise that the slight speed boost you get from this coin actually matters a lot. With the coin, this is 100% consistent with practice, and without the coin, it is almost impossible. So instead of time trials, go into single player versus mode and set the computer players to be off. Then every time you collect the coin respawns and you can try it again. This is the best way to practice this shortcut. The charge jump shortcut is very precise and very difficult. Unless I actually watch you do this shortcut, I cannot tell you if it's your position or angle that was off. But for example, if you hit the white sign right here, then that means you either started too far to the right, or you angled too sharply at the wall. And if you hit the wall all the way past the white sign, then you angled too parallel to the wall. It will take a lot of practice for you to figure this out. Ideally, when you make the shortcut, you will go through the middle of the coin and you will land at the exact spot above the left half of the white sign. And this will take you all the way to the top. However, in a real race, it's not always going to look like this. Part of the skill of being able to make this shortcut is taking a bad alignment and knowing how to fix it as early as possible so that even if it looks really ugly, you still hit the coin and you still end up at the correct spot above the white sign in order to make the shortcut anyway. In that example, I barely touched the coin on the left, but it's also possible by barely touching the coin on the right. And this goes to show that there is actually a wide range of position and angle you can use as long as you still touch the coin and make it to the correct spot above the left half of the white sign. However, there are going to be times where you just fail to hit the correct spot above the white sign. This means you are going to fail it. There will also be situations in a real race where the player in front of you takes the coin, and this means you are going to fail it. And what I mean by failing is you'll probably detach from the wall in a horrible way that loses so much time. So if you notice you are going to fail this shortcut for any reason, then you need to jump off early and just take a smaller time loss than you otherwise would. However, there are things you can do in a real race to increase your success rates. For example, if you have a mushroom, you will always make the shortcut if you just use the mushroom before you do the charge jump. This is especially good when the player in front of you has taken the coin, and you are going to fail it if you don't use the mushroom. Another way you can make the shortcut is by using your own coin item, or even better, the coin block, and this gives you just enough speed to make it up to the top. If the player in front of you is going to take the coin, but you are close enough to get a draft, you can actually use the speed boost from that draft to help you take the shortcut without a coin. The third path you should learn through this section is just the simplest thing possible. You can just drive down the middle with a trick, and then drift around the turn. And actually, you do have a second option here, which is to go slightly more to the side, but you get one more coin if you do this, and it is only barely slower. Going down the middle is the same speed as the coin rail, but you get fewer coins. However, it is safer as it is an open space and not on a rail that can be easily trapped by items. And if you take this path, you can take a mushroom off-road shortcut, which is the same speed as doing the charge jump shortcut without a mushroom. This path is very simple, but it is very safe. The fourth and final path that you should learn through this section is the far wall. Start by going in the same direction as the charge jump, except you don't do a charge jump, you just trick onto the wall at the exact same angle. Drive on the wall until just before you get to the diagonal yellow bar, and then trick off the wall. Do right tricks in the air to align in a way so you attach to the far wall, then do 2 tricks on this wall. This path is not as good as the coin rail. It is 0.2 seconds faster, but getting those extra 5 coins is almost always better. This path is also not as good as the charge jump shortcut because it is 0.8 seconds slower. So it sounds like this path is totally useless, but there is one specific use for this path. The existence of this path allows you to always go for the charge jump. What I mean by this is if somebody is nearby in front of you, there is always a risk that you will fail the charge jump shortcut. But if you recognize that you are not going to make the charge jump shortcut, then you have until the very last moment to simply switch to this path as it follows the exact same line. You just release the charge jump early so you don't jump. Do a trick instead, and you're immediately put onto this line, which is the second fastest path through this section. Now, even though this path is sometimes the best one you can take, I will say that it is completely optional if you want to learn this. The purpose of this path is a backup from the charge jump, but you can always just take the bottom path instead, and you only lose 0.2 seconds for not knowing this path. Okay, we are almost done here. There are just a few more things you need to know to master Wario Stadium. The rest is very simple, so we'll go over it quickly. No matter which path you take out of the second section, you're going to come up to the boost ramp and you should always do the same thing. Start a charge jump at the first boost panel and then release this charge jump right before this long metal bar in the road. If you do this correctly, your launch off the ramp will be a lot more forward than it is upwards. Here's what it looks like compared to just tricking at the very top. It's a very simple and easy time save, and there's no reason not to go for it. But there are 2 things to keep in mind when you go for this charge jump. The first thing is that you cannot steer very hard left and right in the charge jump, and you often do want to aim for a double box in this section. So make sure you watch where other players are going, and you can change the direction of your charge jump right at the end in order to help you align for whichever box you are going for. And if you ever get hit in this section, then you can no longer charge a charge jump, and so you should just trick off of the very top. Tricking off the top boost ramp is the second fastest thing you can do in this section. As you descend from the boost ramps, if you don't have a mushroom, then land in a right drift, charge a mini turbo, then get an orange mini turbo around the next turn through the coin. Do not go for a rainbow mini turbo, it takes too long to charge, then just trick off the last 2 bumps. If you do have a mushroom going into the section, then the alignment is a little bit tricky. Aim farther towards the left, land in a drift, and don't get a mini turbo. Get as close as you can to this pink corner wall and then switch to a left drift. This gives you the best possible alignment into the shortcut. If your alignment is still not perfectly tight, you can press B just a little bit to slow down, and then mushroom through and get an orange mini turbo. This is the easiest way to do the ending shortcut, but there is a way that is a little bit faster. You want to do the setup all exactly the same, but of course take this turn as tight as possible, and then mushroom as you enter the off-road and release a blue mini turbo, but don't bump into the wall. That is the fastest way to take this shortcut with a mushroom. Because of the double sharp turn, it's very hard to get just the right alignment at the end here, so my best advice for you is make sure you don't take this turn too wide. If you leave a lot of space between you and the wall, you will lose a lot of time. If you're going to be slightly off, it's better to err on the side of taking it too tight, because even if you just hit a bit of the corner of this wall, you will actually wrap around really well. And here we finally are, back at the finish line. That is one full lap of Wario Stadium. All of the shortcuts, all of the paths, all of the decisions you could have made while driving this track, and how to save yourself if you are about to fail. The feather item can be used to take shortcuts, and there is only one great feather spot on Wario Stadium. That is, of course, over the final shortcut. And this is especially good as you can get feathers in first place. How I take this shortcut is exactly the same setup as for the mushroom shortcut, except I mini turbo into the off-road and then use the feather. This gives me just the right speed so I don't overshoot past the road. Now, there is another use for the feather, and that's to take this shortcut. It is the same speed as doing the charge jump, but it's safer and you don't need the coin. To take this shortcut, hold your drift through the middle of this ramp or even slightly left, then release the mini turbo and instantly feather. This is about the same speed as the charge jump, so the benefit is that this is an easy way to do the shortcut without the coin. And there is actually another way to take this shortcut. Thank you to TWD98 or Troy for showing me a clip of this. At the third trick ramp, go high up onto this wall and ride the rail. Then you right trick at the end of the rail and use a combination of tricks and the feather to get up to the top. This is actually a bit faster than taking the regular charge jump, and it is much safer as you stay away from other players. But if you're in a situation where you know you'll make the charge jump anyway, then it is better to save the feather for the final shortcut, as that one saves more time. Now I'm going to share some specific advice for you to get better at racing on Wario Stadium. If you're starting in a top position, the very start of the race is extremely important. You will get bumped by other players a lot during this section, so you need to actively steer against their bumps so that you can still get the correct angle onto the wall. Now, a lot of disasters could occur here, so chances are you're not going to have a perfect start to the race, and that's okay. But the reason you want to go here is on the off chance that you do have a perfect start to the race, then you just want to take all the fastest lines. You don't need to worry about items because small time saves are going to be crucial to prevent other players from bumping you off of the rails. If you can get off to a good lead at the very start of Wario Stadium, then no one can stop you from taking the charge jump shortcut. Besides the one mushroom shortcut at the very end, being in first place is extremely strong on Wario Stadium because there are so many rails that you can trap with items, especially the charge jump rail, because you can place bananas up here and people actually just cannot avoid this. Of course, the other rails can get trapped, but it's not quite as effective because players can always jump off the rail early or just get more tricks to jump over items. And this is also why it's important to learn all of the trick spots, because you never know when you might just jump over an item. Not to mention, obviously, tricking more is faster. And there is something cool you can do with the golden mushroom on this track. After the second item set, if you want to get rid of the golden mushroom before the third item set, the best spot to use it is during the trick ramp section. Use your golden mushroom just once here and the timer will start counting down. You can then use it to guarantee you make it up to the charge jump shortcut, and then by the time you reach the next item set, your golden mushroom will be gone. If you use the golden mushroom any later than where I said, then you will not get another item at this item set. Another great strategy is to use a star into the boost ramp item set. If you use the star as late as possible before getting another item, then the star itself can help you take the final shortcut. This is very powerful because you don't have to use any of the new items you got in order to take that shortcut. And this way you get to carry 2 great items into a higher spot. That's all I have for now. But of course, the beauty of Mario Kart is that each race can effectively play out in an infinite number of ways depending on what items you get, who's around you, and how well you play. I am pretty confident in saying that Wario Stadium is definitely going to be the longest track guide I will ever make because there is just so much complexity to this track. This track exemplifies what I love about Mario Kart World. The fun paths, the shortcuts, the difficulty, the decision making, the complexity, and the incredibly fun races that a track like this produces. Wario Stadium is by far my favorite track in Mario Kart World, and you can check out my Mario Kart World track tier list if you want to see my opinions on the different tracks. Or you can check out some other track guides and shortcut guides that I have made. Stay improving, have fun with the game, and maybe one day we will meet on the racecourse.